welcome to episode 5 of The Witch Trial. This is The Poisoned Land. Hi, Bex.
Hello, hiya.
Hiya. So, we'll start this episode off with a nightmare. Liz has a nightmare. And she's trying to escape the house, being driving away, running away, and yet always ends up back at the house. Now, I spoke last episode about the nightmare I had the night before, recording that one. When I have a nightmare about that house, if I'm not just being chased down the stairs, it is that I'm like here, stood in the living room going, when am I going to sell this house? It's always at the point where it's on sale, and yet it's empty of my things, but I still own it.
You just can't get rid of it.
It's like I can't, it's like, it's still my responsibility, but I don't live there. And that brings back the memory of the last time I set foot in the place when I felt the most overwhelming oppression.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Dooley's and I was like, that place feels so unwelcoming.
Like you didn't belong there.
Yeah, like get out, Chris. You know.
That's so strange as well. You'd lived in it for a long time and you'd had experiences there, but for you to step back in there and then just to be hit with that feeling.
Yeah. A pressure of get out. Do you know?
Yeah, it's weird. And I know you're not somebody who, you don't feel things. You know, you'll walk into a room and I'll be like, oh God, I don't like it in here. And you're like, fine. You know, you don't feel anything. So for you to have felt that, you know, that must have been, I believe that completely.
Bill actually finishes Liz's description of the nightmare of looking at the house and then seeing themselves inside looking back. He says, yes, I also have that recurring nightmare. So more than once. That's freaky, isn't it?
It's freaky, yeah. But I have heard of that before. I have heard of people who've been in like haunted locations and maybe grown up in locations, then they'll have really similar nightmares.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm sure there's an explanation for it, but it's still strange.
Yeah. Well, they will all have the same visual triggers and emotional triggers. So I suppose it makes sense that the brains link up and share something similar.
Yeah.
Bill actually says, I feel like we are going to die here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, because I guess with the blight everywhere and, you know, animals going crazy and drink, it's misery. It's a depressed thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah, he sounds depressed just from the way that he's speaking and then the things that he's doing. He doesn't sound like the person who we met in episode 1.
No. So cut to a stormy night out in the Welsh countryside, and Bill finds his hands are cracked, dry and cracked, so that they're open wounds almost.
Yeah, he wakes up in the morning, doesn't he, with his hands like that?
Yeah. He's actually in agony with it. I mean, people can get skin conditions, and I guess out in the harsh countryside, you might get very dry skin.
But he's a painter, you know, he's not a farmer, he's not out on the land, is he? He doesn't seem to be overly, I don't know, I might be wrong, maybe I've misinterpreted it, but he doesn't seem to be, you know, he's not cutting trees down and he's not out there, he's not a builder, is he? He's a painter.
Yeah, but because I work with chemicals, as a printer, if you mess your hands up around in cleaning fluids, all these chemicals for cleaning brushes, it dries your hands out and makes them go cracked.
Overnight?
No.
And would you go, he went to a doctor, didn't he? He went to doctors and they just didn't know what it was. They had no.
Yeah, it's an odd one.
Interesting.
And he says that it stopped me from painting. Do you know what I mean? Now, as I said to you before, when the demon shouted through Lucy, get Chris's eyes, I come home. I've had an eye illness for a couple of weeks since York. I'm not sat here saying, Becky, it stopped me from watching TV. Because that's my thing. You know, I'm not making that assumption, but maybe if I was in Bill's position, I would be like, that's the one thing I don't want to happen. Yeah, yeah.
Well, those pesky demons, they did get your eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I went to they were looking for scratches in my eyes, and they were like, it's weird because it hasn't had a scratch. And I should have said, yeah, no, demon did it.
Oh, I'm glad you didn't, because you'd have probably been up.
So, next up, turning up at the farm, a man in his 60s called Dickie Dodds. He's dressed in tweed, and he's played by the actor Reece Shearsmith from League of Gentlemen and Inside Number 9.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Great actor. He's like, I don't believe in ghosts. It's all nonsense. There's plenty of other explanations for this, and I'll get to the bottom of it. I read it in the paper, and here I am. And I'm a dowser, and I've got my 2 L-shaped dowsing rods, and I search for ley lines. What's your opinion on ley lines? What do you know?
So I was saying, wasn't I? I don't know a lot, and I've heard of them. I had a little Google, and from what I read and from listening to the podcast, they are parts of the land that seem to hold large amounts of energy. And they were, I think, back in the 1920s, they were kind of decided that ley lines were a thing. And if you look on the map, like in the podcast, if you look on a map, you've got Stonehenge on a ley line. You've got multiple different sites that seem to have high amounts of energy, all in a straight line. And yeah, they produce high amounts of energy. That's all I know. I don't know anything else about them.
Yeah, Dickie does ask for a map of the UK, and he begins to show that a straight line crosses Stonehenge and crosses other sites of note, saying that we believe these were built on this pathway for a purpose, you know.
Yeah.
And then saying 2 ley lines could converge exactly where your house is, and he's checking for dowsing, and the rods are crossing, and he's like, yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I've detected them. And then he notices that the strongest area of detection is where the strongest activity seems to centre, and lo and behold, it's around the electricity meter.
Yeah.
The start of it all. Now, Kieran explains, in 1920s, Alfred Watkins finds structures are connected using straight lines, and maybe hauntings are powered by these ley lines. Now, do ley lines emit an energy is the question, and we know that EMF can make people hallucinate if they're EMF sensitive. That's science. That's not paranormal. So yeah, if you can tally up that ley lines give off an earthly energy, then there's some credibility to that, I suppose.
And then you just, would you hallucinate the same thing? Would you hallucinate the smells, both of you? Would you hallucinate the sounds? It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's not like one of them seeing a woman once and that's it. There's a lot going on there.
We're just back to the question of, how often do people think people hallucinate?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
hallucinated.
Like you do all the time. Oh yeah, I walked over a ley line. Oh yeah, hallucinated, and I was tired, so I hallucinated. It's not the sort of story you have, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a good way of explaining things away. If you
you might be hallucinating. Oh yeah, might be.
But I'm not.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. But yeah. So Evelyn says that science would say that ley lines and such is nonsense. The barn where the pig went crazy was joined on to the hotspot.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too much of a, as far as Dickie's concerned, there was a big link there. Dickie has never felt a pull on his dowsing rods as strong as this. He's like, in his opinion, this is a very, very strong earth energy. So it all makes sense, falls into place. Not paranormal, but there is a natural energy source which could mess with brains, let's say.
Right.
Dickie actually has a funny turn himself after being overwhelmed with this energy frequency, because he's learned over the years to know instinctively that, oh yeah, I can feel the energy. You hear ghost hunters who are sensitive say that this room feels thick with energy or whatever. And
Yeah, I'd love I'd love someone to show me, like, be able to put that feeling on me, you know, so I can.
But what we have had, Becky, is that feeling of cold come out of nowhere, haven't we?
Yeah, the only time that I genuinely can say that we've felt not cold, but I felt the energy change where like that, you know which location I mean, where we were sat, I think it was me, you and Jill maybe, and we felt it just changed, maybe Lucy, it changed, and we heard the banging on the roof, and it went freezing cold, and I could feel just the atmosphere in the room change. Change.
It was me, you, and Lucy.
Was it Lucy? I have never felt anything like that before, and anything like that since. And that scared me, you know, that because I'm not a sensitive person. I don't feel changes in energy. That's not something that I can do. Yeah. But that was so strong.
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone's interested in watching that video, it's titled 3 of Us on my YouTube channel. Okay. So he has a funny turn. Now, Dickie and his wife used to live in a house, and they would always feel ill at home. When they left to go to London for a night away, they would feel fine, come back and just feel ill. So he had some sort of similar idea of this story.
Yeah.
A black stream, they called it, like a dark ley line, if you will. It's a bad place to be. Dickie's wife got cancer while they lived in that house. They moved away, and the woman who owned the house after got cancer. Cancer's 1 in 3.
It is, yeah. I was thinking that. It doesn't mean that that is something to do with the house necessarily.
No, because Dickie didn't get cancer.
No.
So, in the barn, he determines that there are 2 black streams crossing, and says, if you stay here, this house will kill you.
Yeah, pretty intense, that.
Danny and a druid called Lawrence in the real world go to detect ley lines actually near the farm, and stood at the farm gate. They do detect a dowsing cross, and Lawrence the druid suggests that all ley lines are just neutral energy lines. However, because it's a place of energy, if you did a ritual or in some way contaminated the ley line itself, you could pollute it and change it to be a dark energy.
And he explained it, didn't he, as if there was a slaughter at the top of a stream, the stream would then run red throughout.
Yeah.
And that's how he explained it, wasn't it? That it would pollute the ley line.
Yeah. But then how far does that go? Would that cross all the Stonehenge and everything on the map? Just keep going.
This is what I mean. Like, in my mind, I see it almost as in my mind, ritual in this particular place, there's ley lines there, which creates a huge energy, which then means that particular area, so the house or whatever was there before, that piece of land, has then almost soaked up any bad energy. That's how I envisaged it.
So let's just say that there were witches there, and why would they do a ritual that causes a blight where they are?
Were they just doing black magic? Were they just there?
Well, what's black magic?
Well, I don't know. Were they there just with witches, even though we're close to Pendle? I don't really get it, because what thought do they have a cauldron? Do they like stir the cauldron and say spells? Like, what is it that if you believe these 7 witches were there, what is it that they had to be doing on that piece of land for it to pollute the land itself? Like, it must have been some pretty bad stuff. Yeah,
but I've met a few white witches in my time, people who do spell work, you know, and it's a witch thing has got a stupid connotation to be bad. They just work with nature, and like a druid obviously is nature based.
Yeah.
It's the word itself conjures up the wrong thing.
So then when they're not practicing good and they're practicing bad, what are they trying to do?
You've got to think that a witch in the fantasy land is like, I'm going to sacrifice a baby to drink the baby's blood to give me youth.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the far end. You are.
Hocus pocus.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas real energy work, now a witch can be a guy as well.
Yeah.
A witch, you know, but it's just like paganism, isn't it? It's like, you know, everything's got a living energy. If you take sage to burn, you must give the earth something back. It's a mysticism. It's not really a good or bad thing. It's just a practice that gets a bad rep. Look at the Ouija board.
Well, yeah, you're right. And then
You know,
how I don't know if I can believe that the land was polluted by black magic. You know?
no. Now a lot of the like Pendle witches and stuff, or witches in general, they knew that they had a bad name in town, and so they would get shunned, okay? And then their answer would be, well, I curse you and all your...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually know somebody who got cursed. One of, you know, Julie's friends got cursed.
By who?
By a woman who took against and said, you will never have a healthy baby. And you know what? She never did.
You're joking.
Now, is that psychosomatic?
No, but I don't create that in your mind. I don't think you can do that. I don't think
do that to your body.
No, because look at, this is a pretty deep conversation now, but look at all the people who, you know, maybe get pregnant who don't want a baby, and you know they absolutely that is not what they want. They still have a healthy baby.
Yeah.
So that's awful.
Yeah. But so yeah, witches get a bit of a misunderstood. Androids get misunderstood, I think.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's very far fetched to think
that. But this might uncover that these were bad witches, and we're just wanting to cause havoc. You know, we don't know.
No, we don't.
So Kieran comes in, and he's explaining the ideomotor effect. Naturally, he goes to the Ouija board, and I'm fine about that because I that's how I learned from being a child. I was all ready for that. I was like, yeah, the ideomotor effect. I understand that.
Yeah.
Ouija board is where you don't mean to be influencing the glass. But I've had this before. When we very first started, I would put this argument forward and I'd say, look, guys, well, we're all going to put our finger on the glass. And when I'm asking, is there anyone here? Not one of us is going to imagine the glass is going to go to no. It's going to move to no because that's counterintuitive. If no one's here, it's not going to move at all. So the only place it can move is yes. So all the team is already preloaded for it either to not move or to move to yes.
Yeah.
And I totally was on board with that. But as we've seen, it doesn't matter that if we're subconsciously moving the glass, because it can move faster than we know what is being written. It can give answers to questions that are then proved, but we could have no way of knowing the answer.
Yeah, like we've had to go away and do our research to be able to say, holy crap, like that is actually so accurate. You know, we've had somebody sitting on the sidelines asking the questions with the Google up because come through. We have no idea. We're in a place, so you know, a town that's not our own, city that's not our own. We've got, you know, we're getting answers. We're looking to the person to be like, is that right? Like, you know, we don't. And the fact that they're asking the questions and not influencing the glass, that's to me amazing. And Kieran does say, you know, if you've on the Ouija board, it's the glass has gone to J-O-H, you automatically think, yep, it's going to go to N. But and that's fine. I totally get that. But when it's spelling out words that you have to be like, what was that? And then on the sideline writing it down. when it actually spells, because it's a space bar, it's all just letter. It's hard to sometimes pick out where the words stop and start when it's going so quickly.
Yeah.
And you've got someone writing it down, and then they say the sentence out. You're like, oh God, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, that's my brain isn't working that quickly.
Many times you get newbies on our table, and it'll go A-N, and someone will go Andrea.
I hate
and then
that.
it goes to Angela, and they're like, oh.
But I can't, even if we've got J or H, I hate it when people are like N.
Yeah.
Because I think that's totally not the point of this.
Yeah.
Your brain should try and stay as blank as it possibly can.
I agree.
try to look away.
I look away.
Yeah, because I think I don't want my brain to unknowingly influence where this glass goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that, because sometimes you can't help but be guilty if it's wrote Thomas but not the AS at the end. You're kind of looking for the A, and then you're looking for the S, and it's a danger. It's a danger.
Yeah.
But the point is that you are trying to not do that, and sometimes even if you think it's going to spell Thomas, there's no way until you've looked it up that it's Thomas.
Well, yeah, it's like we had the guy at Doggy Daycare, didn't we? We had the guy who...
Jordan.
The what?
Jordan.
Was it Jordan? Is that his name?
Knock on the shutter.
Who? Yeah, that's it. Who told us all about him? He had sesh head.
Yeah.
And he jumped a bridge in this car park in this place. This on this day. This is how old he. And I was like, right, I'm gonna have to Google this after it. It was all there. It was all there. And it was miles away. Like, it hadn't been on the news. It was in Wales.
Yeah.
Even, it was nothing. We'd never heard of this person. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of pulls out idiomotor.
Now, when you look, because Kieran also mentions it about pendulums, saying that if you hold it long enough and you're saying, show me the answer for yes, eventually it'll move in some form. Right. But when you look at the idiomotor effects, way it works, if you're going to take that, it always says that it is a mental delay. There's a while you're thinking about it that it should be so and so, there's a delay. We have instantaneous answers. We don't get a chance to idiomotor effect. It's just gone. You're following it.
I was thinking, would it be worth and I was thinking about this because of his comments. Could it work if you had somebody else thinking the questions and somebody else holding the pendulum? Would that work? Why wouldn't that work?
Yeah.
If you were thinking the questions and I was holding it, I don't know what your questions are, because I've had it when you could, or you be asking somewhere in the next room and I'll have the pendulum. Like that could be another option. That could be another way of.
But we don't know what moves the pendulum. It's not spirit.
So what is it?
Exactly. It's like an intuition. It's like a higher thing. I don't know what it is, but it's not spirit. I tell you why it's not spirit, because it works click like on demand.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And we've had times when the Ouija board will not work because there's simply nobody there that time.
Yeah.
Whereas a pendulum will work because. So it's like same with the human pendulum, where you have someone stood in the middle. The fact that it works non-stop, it's like, well, it's obviously not a spirit then, because if you've ever worked with spirit, they're not just always queued up waiting. Sometimes they're like sod off.
Which to me makes me think it's so easy for that to be disproven.
Yeah.
It's so easy for scientists and people who don't believe to be like, well, if it's not a spirit, it's you.
Yeah.
You're holding it. You're thinking the question. You're subconsciously you're doing it.
But when we were at the police cells in Keighley recently, and we had guests, I gave one of the ladies a pendulum, and I said, get a yes, get a no. Now ask it how many kids I have. And she got a lot of questions correct about me. And then, like, I did something about my mum or our mum, and I can't remember. She got that right.
Really?
And she didn't even know the answer. And I'm like, So how do you explain that? Because you were answering questions correctly that you do not know the answer to for.
See,
You know?
that's fascinating. That
Yeah.
I find really interesting.
Mm.
And you can categorically say, "Yep, you're right," and that
Yeah.
person, no.
Yeah. So then, Dickie says, look back into the farm's past, which is evidently where we're gonna do the history dive, and that's precarious because then you could get influenced by whatever's gone in the past, or you could be spot on. Maybe that is what's to blame. We'll see what's to come. But it seems like people are taking an interest, and they want to help, and that's all well and good. But the family have to live there with these influences and people walking around and.
Well, this is what I mean. Like, I know we know there's a family that live there at the moment, and I just think, God, I would hate to know there's a podcast going on because I'd have to listen to it.
Yeah.
I almost wouldn't want to know what was being said.
Yeah, if any bunch of people, even if you don't believe that there was a witch's coven in your bloody back garden,
it opens you up, doesn't it? It opens you up. It opens your mind up to think about it when it might have been fully closed off before.
Yeah, if they have a natural nightmare one night, they could be thinking, yeah, but what is, you wake up scared? Oh, yeah. It'd be the witch thing.
Exactly. I just, I wouldn't want to know. I would want to try and not be involved. I can see why they don't want.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're up to, and that's where we'll leave it. So thanks again for your time, Beck, and thank you, viewers, for watching.
Thank you.
See you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.